Our group decided to study Conn syndrome for the homeostasis group project. Conn syndrome, which is also called primary aldosteronism, is a disease that affects the production and secretion of the hormone aldosterone. Aldosterone is a hormone that regulates both sodium and potassium in the body. Conn syndrome affects the endocrine system. The endocrine system is the organ system that regulates different functions in the body using hormones. It is made up of glands that secrete hormones into the bloodstream or the fluid surrounding cells, and receptors in organs that detect changes in hormone levels. Hormones are chemical messengers that move throughout the body to specialized receptors. They control or regulate biological processes in the body that help maintain homeostasis. The endocrine system releases hormones that move throughout the body through the bloodstream until they reach specialized receptors. The endocrine system will maintain bodily functions like blood sugar levels, our fight or flight response, blood pressure, menstruation, and our sleep cycle. When an area in the body is not in homeostasis, the receptors in that area will tell the glands to release hormones to help regulate that system.
The adrenal gland is made up of glandular epithelial tissue. There are two in your body, one attached to each kidney. The adrenal gland is comprised of two parts, the medulla and the cortex. The cortex has three main parts, one of which is the zona glomerulosa. This is where aldosterone is produced. The adrenal gland is usually surgically removed laparoscopically. In about 1/3 of patients, the problem stems from both or the opposite adrenal gland. This is because when one adrenal gland has a problem, the other must overproduce aldosterone, which causes Conn syndrome.
The hormone aldosterone affects the levels of sodium and potassium in the blood. Sodium is found in the blood and can affect the levels of water through osmosis. When sodium levels increase, then the water levels must also increase. When this happens, you can have side effects like an excessive need to drink water because you need to supply more water to the bloodstream. This can also lead to high blood pressure, which is why hypertension is a symptom of Conn syndrome. Aldosterone also decreases the level of potassium, which is used to regulate fluids and help with muscle contractions. People with Conn syndrome tend to have lower potassium levels, which leads to more frequent urination and muscle fatigue because it isn't properly being regulated.
In most cases, Conn syndrome can be caused randomly, but the most often causes are a tumor lying on the adrenal gland, odd growths on both adrenal glands, overproduction of the aldosterone by the adrenal glands, very high blood pressure, and in some rare cases, it can be passed down by parents. Conn syndrome is found more commonly in women, but people within the ages around 30 to 50 are also more at risk. In some other cases, people with high blood pressure starting at the age of 30, low potassium levels, and people needing 3 or more medications for high blood pressure can all be at risk.
Symptoms include muscle twitching and cramps, lack of muscle strength, paralysis, which comes and goes, headache, problems with eyesight, increased levels of thirst, and a feeling of pins and needles.
There are many different types of Conn syndrome, including primary aldosteronism, a hormonal disorder connected with high blood pressure. Another type is unilateral aldosteronism, which affects only one adrenal gland. An aldosterone-producing adrenal carcinoma, cancerous cells form on the outside of the adrenal gland. Yet another type is aldosterone-producing extra-adrenal tumors, in which tumors form in the adrenal gland. And the last kind we are discussing is glucocorticoid, where aldosterone secretion is under the control of adrenocorticotropic hormone.
The treatment for Conn syndrome will vary based on the type of Conn syndrome that a person has. Primary hyperaldosteronism is commonly treated by the removal of the adrenal gland. This is called an adrenaldectomy. Most adrenaldectomies are laparoscopic, which is where they make a small incision and use a tiny scope with a video camera attached to perform the operation. This surgery is non-invasive and can be less painful and have a shorter hospital stay than other surgeries. Secondary hyperaldosteronism is usually treated with drugs. These drugs include spironolactone and epirlinone, which block the effects of aldosterone. The use of medication can help lower potassium levels, but usually patients will need to continue taking other medications for high blood pressure. Finally, bilateral hyperplasia is treated with water or diuretics because they help to regulate the fluid that is built up in the body.
Treatment is usually fast and uneventful. Although high blood pressure improves for about 85% of cases, high blood pressure is still possible even after surgery. Drugs may still be needed for hours to weeks after surgery, so it is important to continue to be checked by your healthcare provider after treatment for proper monitoring of your blood pressure and levels of electrolytes.
In the United States, a study was done on patients with severe hypertension and found that 6.1% had Conn syndrome, while in Italy, the same study was done on patients also with severe hypertension and found that 8% had Conn syndrome.